My name's Josh. I'm a co-host on The Imperfects and the son of Sri Lankan and English immigrants, and I call Australia home. I'd like to recognise the traditional peoples of this continent whose land was stolen nearly 250 years ago. In particular, we at The Imperfects would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which this podcast was recorded, and we extend our respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. I'm inspired by the world's oldest living culture, and we at The Imperfects pay homage to the traditions of story when we share stories on our podcast. This episode contains a graphic description of bullying experienced by our guest at a young age. If this feels like it's too much for you to listen to right now, you may want to skip this one and come back at another time.
We're all imperfect, and on this podcast, I'll be chatting with a variety of interesting people who are willing to make themselves vulnerable by sharing their own struggles and imperfections.
Then we'll discuss the invaluable takeaways we can all apply to our own imperfect lives.
I'm Hugh Van Kylenberg from the Resilience Project.
And I'm Ryan Shelton from my mum.
And I'm Josh from Hugh's mum.
And this is The Imperfects. Here we are back again. And, people say sequels don't work. People say, don't do sequels.
What's your favourite sequel?
Back to the Future 2. Okay. One of the greatest movies of all time.
Josh?
It's Terminator 2, people often say is better than Terminator 1.
Yep.
So I don't know if that's my favourite sequel, but that's what I was thinking about. Will Ben Shewry 2 be the Terminator 2 or is it just equally as good as the first?
Yeah. Your favourite?
Ben Shewry Part 2 is my favourite sequel.
Favourite sequel?
Wow.
Yep.
Wow, you're going to love this episode then.
It's so good.
Yeah, it is incredible.
Before we do get into it, I have a little announcement.
Admission?
It's an admission. It's a bit of a tail between my legs thing to talk about, although I'm trying not to attach any shame or embarrassment to it. So for listeners of the podcast for the last little while, you'll know that I, at the end of last year, I gave up my smartphone and started using what I called a smug phone, which is a flip phone, a not so smartphone. And a little while ago, I've gone back to this. I've gone back to my iPhone.
Oh, I feel like I heard screaming in the background.
It's just, I feel like the only reason I feel like I had to say it on the podcast is because I feel so self-conscious if I'm out in public. If anyone that listens to the podcast sees me with my iPhone, I feel like I'm lying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got to 225 days with the flip phone. And where I'm at now, I really, at this stage, it's only been like about a month of having the iPhone. But so far, everything could change, of course. But so far, I feel like my habits have changed.
Yeah, definitely.
So there is an upside. And look, apologies to everyone that was following the story and really rooting for me.
Well, a lot of people have copied you, I think, who I feel like.
Well, I don't want to discourage people from doing it because it, like I said, I did it for 225 days and I reckon I needed to do it for a long time to affect any sort of habitual behavior that I had with my iPhone before that. So now I've got it. So the way I'm using the iPhone now is I literally have my task app, phone, WhatsApp, messages, voice memo, Peloton.
This is an app for Peloton. Oh, I thought
it's not an app for Peloton, but it is one of the only apps. Uber, Google Maps. That's all I got.
Great.
And I'm not trying to make excuses, and everything could change. I could become addicted again, but at the moment, it's working. Just wanted to say that out loud.
Yeah.
I'm personally grateful for the fact that you went to the smug phone for such a long time, because you were on your smug phone the entire time that we wrote our live show, and I strongly believe that the creative ideas you come up with there were they're some of the funniest and best things I've ever seen you do, and you come up with those when you're on your smug phone, and I have no doubt there's a correlation between the level of creativity that you're able to go to for this show and the lack of time you spent staring at a screen.
I should explain actually why. The reason why I've gone back, that's probably the most important thing. The reason I've gone back was because with the keypad, like the buttons, the click buttons on the flip phone, it was really hard and annoying to send messages to people. And the whole point of getting rid of the iPhone was so I could connect to people more. And I underestimated how important messages are to stay in contact and to be talking to people and connecting with people. So, and it was amazing when I went back to the iPhone. It was like, whoa, these things are these things are incredible. It's like I was like rediscovering the technology again.
It was a joyous moment when I saw a blue message pop up and then the bubbles underneath it.
Yeah, it does.
I have to say,
it's so much more enjoyable messaging people than it was. It was really hard. So anyway, I won't go on about it. That's where I'm at.
Okay,
Brilliant.
But this is about venturing.
Congratulations on 200.
Yeah, well done.
225 days. Congratulations. That's a huge effort.
Thank you, mate.
Okay, so in part 2 of this episode with Ben, there's some really fascinating topics that I haven't heard talked about too much. One of them is the way he builds empathy with his staff at Attica and the culture he's created at Attica, which is just so inspirational for me, I guess, as a business owner as well, or for anyone who's worked in a team. It's really fascinating. He also talks about some things from his childhood, which, I still am so grateful that he shared, because it definitely wouldn't have been an easy thing for him to share. But then he talks also about issues with body image. An incident that took place actually when I was with him, away with him on our trip. And it just led to a fascinating conversation with you, Josh. So that's all in part 2 of this episode with Ben.
This all kind of comes back kind of neatly, I reckon, to what the thing we never really got to talking about, which is the way that you and your staff, the practice, I guess, that you guys have at Attica.
Yep.
And the way, can you explain what you do, what your staff does?
It's called staff speeches. It's an activity that we've been doing for 12 years. It is born out of a solution to a problem. The problem being the disconnect between the way that a restaurant is. There's 2 separate teams. There's one team. We always say there's one team, but there's sort of always fundamentally 2 separate teams. That's because there's 2 very distinct roles in a restaurant: the engine room, which is the kitchen, which is making the food, and then the front of house team who are serving it, the waiters, the sommeliers, that part. Now, it should be said, my fundamental understanding is no matter how good I make the food, if the food is not served with grace, dignity, an education, love, it's nothing. So the service is actually really the thing. Okay, this is really the powerful thing. Now, you will all have had experiences where you went to a restaurant where the food wasn't great, but the service was really good, and you were like, wow, that was great, right? And likewise, I've had experiences where the food was amazing, but the service was pretty average, and I kind of that wasn't so good. That's because we're humans. We feed off of the positive vibes of other humans. We want to be treated kindly. It's just we want to feel like we're a part of something. It's just intrinsically like who we are as a species. And so I understand that fundamentally as a core thing. That I learnt it real early at Attica, thankfully. But still, because you're in different parts of the building, there will always be certain people in a business that don't cross paths for whatever reason. And in our business, it might be the person that's kind of on the, washing the glasses or making the juices, which is right in the front part of the restaurant. They might not cross paths with, let's say, the junior pastry chef in the back part of the building very often, once or twice a day. And what I was noticing was that when you don't know somebody, it is more difficult to feel empathy for them. And so I was witnessing when things would go wrong, there would, between these, let's just point out these 2 people, there would be a bigger blow up than necessary. So I thought to myself, what can I do to bring this team together and to be more as one? The other thing I really hated about almost all of my previous jobs, but not all of them, was that I felt like a number in a company. Like I felt like my opinion didn't matter. I just felt like a resource. And that is a terrible way to make a human being feel, especially if you're the boss, if you're employing them and hopefully you're making a profit at the company. That's a terrible way to make anybody feel. It's not acceptable. So I wanted to sort of solve these 2 problems, communication and understanding. and giving a voice to an individual within a group environment. So I conceived this idea called Staff Talks. We had a roster, and everybody would be on the roster, every single position in the company, and weekly they get the opportunity to sit. So everybody sits in the dining room at 4 p.m. on a Wednesday. They have their meal with them, and the person who's on the roster presents a speech to the group. So this is the concept of staff, in its essence, the staff speeches concept. And they can talk about anything they want. There's no rules, except it can't be negative. And when I say negative, it's understood what I mean by that. It can't be, here's everything you hate about working in this restaurant.
Yeah.
Unless it was, here's everything I hate about working in this restaurant, but here's all of the things that I've got, all the solutions to the problems that I see, right? But we don't have a culture like that anyway. We have people that love working there. But that's just the only rules. We just don't need that negative. Now, it can be very negative subjects, and it has been. It's been about suicide. It's been about suicidal attempts. It's been revealing, that a staff member suffered from bipolar disorder. It's been about depression many times. It's been about sexual harassment. It's been about a family fleeing North Korea and several members of the family being murdered in the process to South Korea. It's also been about a deep love of the Richmond Football Club, right? Not my love. Yeah. It's actually been that several times by Matt, the head chef. So we've laughed and we've cried a lot. I don't often put myself in it. I did give one late last year because at the request of the staff. I talked about bolognese and lasagna and culture and what, my family's history and how we struggle to sort of identify to our culture. Yeah. We don't really understand what it is. But the idea was when you give somebody this voice and a platform and you allow them to, and you have the audience is riveted on what they're saying. There's no phones, there's no chatter. It's super respectful. And everybody's sitting around in a circle and listening. They have their complete and undivided attention for 30 minutes or however long they want. And the idea is that when they are given this platform, they reveal something of themselves. And most people become very vulnerable. And they tell stories that they wouldn't normally tell. There's no encouragement from me to what you talk about. They just come up with their topic themselves. They don't vet it with anybody. They don't discuss it with anybody. They can if they want, but they don't. And they normally, they're well prepared. It's a privilege to give it. It's understood that it's a privilege to give it. So you have to take it seriously. And if you don't, then there'll be a conversation about why you didn't prepare and why you didn't deliver. But most of all, it's providing this platform for them to be vulnerable, to reveal something of themselves if they want to, or just tell their personal story. And the thing about that is, in a second, we are getting to know that person on an intimate level that we wouldn't normally. And so what happens now is we feel for that person, right? We feel empathy for that person. We're like, wow, I never knew that person suffered from bipolar disorder. I'd totally change my approach if I knew that. Not that it's necessary to know that, but wow, that really that's a lot. That's a lot, right? I have empathy for that person because that's hard and I don't have to live with that.
And in the heat of service, you might think twice about how you talk to them.
It won't happen. So understanding each other in the moment when the pressure is coming on, and you wouldn't normally behave like that, but the pressure is coming on and you're reaching this heated point, it's 99% less likely to happen. It brings everybody closer. It makes people feel special, and they should feel special. They are special. And so it's been a really, really important thing for us fundamentally. And it's, something I love. I hate missing it. I was there yesterday. I would never schedule anything on that time unless I'm traveling. And it's a really joyful thing. And not everything is as heavy as I said it was, right? It can be jovial. It could be, yesterday's conversation was about restaurant sustainability. Young George, sous chef, gave a conversation about, sustainability in the restaurant. It's great, It's great to see young people thinking like that.
But I guess at the very least, I mean, it's such an. I mean, this is what you told me on that night when we were when I ate at Attica, and I was just blown away. Because I guess at the very least, of course, it's going to build empathy, and particularly when people are vulnerable and they reveal something about themselves to everyone, that's going to build empathy, and you allow people in, and they can know you, and it builds connections. But at the very least, even if you get up and talk about the Richmond Football Club, it at least gives everyone something to talk to you about.
Yeah,
throughout the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, I hate the Richmond Football Club.
No.
Whatever, it starts conversations.
It's interesting as well because, that it's evolved a lot as well. But 12 years ago, I assure you, it wasn't not happening. There's nobody's talking about mental health 12 years ago.
No.
Not in our industry. Barely talking about it now, right? Some people are. But it doesn't make us exceptional. It's just here's a problem. What's the solution? There's got to be a solution because there's always a solution. There's always a way out. That's my kind of unconditional kind of attitude. Now, I admit that I'm privileged, right? So, but I haven't always had that privilege. But I have had some privilege. My childhood was exceptional, right? It wasn't a childhood that I had that had any money in it. I paid for my own way my whole life. But I have this incredible gift from my parents, and that's just the excellence of their parenting to this day, right? They are extraordinary.
You told me a story yesterday that I have thought about a lot. Last night, your mum kind of saved your life.
Yeah, my mum and dad saved my life numerous times. My dad saved me. I had this habit of nearly drowning several times when I was a child because we lived on a very rugged coastline, Taranaki, west coast of North Island, and we lived in a remote place, Whaireno, and I've told the story of nearly drowning heaps. It inspired a dish which is, macabre, to try to make people experience your near drowning through eating at your dish. But yeah, but
is that Frog in a Pond?
It was called Sea Tastes.
Tastes, okay.
Yeah. I literally wanted to put you into the place where when you ate it, you thought of being churned in a wave. That was actually This is like when I'm 28 or 29 years old, so I'm in a more ridiculous phase. But
wow.
But yeah, the story, quickly on the story of nearly drowning, my dad told the story about when he was just married. They came for a holiday on the Gold Coast. He was in the water, up to his waist, and he had his wedding ring on, and it came off as he had his hand in the water. It fell off in the water. And there was no, it was churned, so you couldn't see anything. And he's like, oh my God, I've lost my wedding ring. And he put his hand down, and there was his wedding ring, right? He just, the first time he put his hands down, he found it's like finding a needle in a haystack.
Incredible.
In the surf, when you know the surf, I'm a surfer, so I know it really well. It doesn't happen, right? He tells this later story, this comparison to that story, where on this beach, and you've got to understand the beaches in this area, they curve, they go deep very quickly. So the sand is there, the water's there, but they roll right under that lip. So it could be 3 meters deep, just where that water is, right? A sudden drop, like a shelf. And I'm running ahead of them slightly as a wave crashes onto the beach. I'm 3 years old, and it sucked me right down. Just a breaker on the beach. It just sucked me into that pit, and I'm gone. And my dad basically kind of dives into the water because dad's fine physical specimen his whole life. He jumps into the water and he puts his hand down. Can't see me, puts his hand down. And there I am. So this is the story that he tells about this wedding ring and this child. Yeah. So
wow.
Yeah. He's it was above his head, but yeah. But so yeah, and then it was another time, but that's not the story that you asked me to tell, Hugh. I'm digressing.
Only if you're comfortable. You don't.
I am comfortable, man. And you know what? I've actually never told the story, and I think never told the story publicly. I don't think about it a lot. I don't even know how it came up in our conversation yesterday. But my mother is a school teacher. Principal, hugely successful, pushed against the grain of male dominance in schools as principals her whole career. She's a real hero to me. She's, sorry, I'm going to get a bit teary, but she's such a big reason why I am who I am. We touched on yesterday too the way that young men over celebrate their fathers a little bit, and I felt like in my earlier career I did that, and it's a regret that I have. I actually am a person that lives without regrets, which is pretty strange, but because I don't necessarily see the things that go wrong as bad things, but that's a regret that I have. Not that my mum ever said it to me. My dad said it to me once though. Whew, he scolded me for it. But my mum is my grit and drive and social justice and my understanding of my place in the world. My dad is really creative. My mum's creative too. My dad's like an artist, but mum is like strong and, had to fight so much harder than any man for the things that she achieved. And I saw as a child who got knocked back for positions in schools that she should have got, and she'll probably not be happy with me for telling the story, but it's the truth, right? So she's a real inspiration. Today's her birthday. So she's
what's her name?
Kay.
Kay.
Yeah, K-A-Y-E.
Happy birthday, Kay.
Happy birthday,
Yeah,
Kay.
happy birthday, Mum. So she was a relief teacher when we were really little, before she went back into full-time teaching. And so the first primary school I went to, I'm pretty young, like I'm 5 or 6, I think. I haven't really discussed this much with my mum, but I'm on a platform in a tree, like a tree house, but like a flat platform with a ladder and like a stand kind of under a tree, partly supported by the tree with older kids. They've taken me there and they have a rope and they make a noose from the rope and they string it around the tree and they put it around my neck and they're about to push. The platform's 2 meters high, probably. It's quite high.
Was this as like a joke, or is this
I don't actually know, but
were you friends with them, or was it?
No, they were older kids. They weren't friends. They were much older kids. It's funny because I think I'm probably going to examine this quite a lot in the future now because we talked about it yesterday, and I've not really thought about this in a negative sense. But when you tell the story, it's pretty alarming. And it's pretty clear that it's a classic case of chronic bullying as well, right? Like, I mean, that really could have gone wrong. But so They're about to push me off. They're about to hang me. And I have this memory. This is one of the most powerful memories of my mother. And she must have got wind from another kid. So a kid must have, thankfully, a good kid must have gone back to the school office and said, something bad's about to happen, miss, they're going to hang this kid. And my mum comes around the corner because it was around the back of the school where nobody could see. And these 3 older boys had me. And then my mother comes around the corner, flying around the corner of the school. And the look on her face, oh my God, like blackest fury, wow. Like I could use all kinds of swear words to like describe what I saw in her face. Like it's terrifying, because I think I'd gone from like being probably, like at 5 years old, what do you know, right? Like you don't necessarily, I don't think if you've got a noose around your neck and you're going to be pushed off a platform, I don't think you understand the concept of being hung. Like, I don't know. No. I don't think so. Like, I've raised 3 kids that don't understand that. And
certainly not the seriousness of it.
No. Fuck. And my mum just like, I don't ever really kind of remember, like, it just blacks out after that what happened. But, like, I just remember she comes around the corner and it's like what is happening? And, and I realized now from talking about you yesterday, I really realized I dodged a bullet there,
Oh, massively.
Yeah.
Massively. I think about
haunting.
It is, isn't it? I thought about it a lot yesterday because you have written your dad a gratitude letter and I think that kind of prompted us to talk about into the same to our mums, and you're saying you are going to do one for your mum.
Yeah, so from listening, a big fan of the podcast, as you know, and I was really, really moved by the Father's Day episode where you wrote to your dad. I was so moved by it, and I could hear in your words and in your voice, there's so many similarities with my own father. He's just such a humble, great guy, Rob, and your father's beautiful, beautiful reaction to it. And I was like, I was vacuuming in my house, and I was like, I don't stop when I'm doing stuff, but I'm like, if I don't stop right now, I wasn't completely listening to the episode. I was like, if I don't stop doing this and start writing it now. So I went to the computer and I like busted out like, I don't know, 500 words in 15 minutes or something. It's real rough. And I'm like, okay, I've got to start. Father's Day was coming up, I think. And so I sent him a message to say, hey, instead of a present, I'm going to for Father's Day, I'm going to give you a gratitude letter. It's inspired by my friend who wrote his dad a gratitude letter. Dad was like, oh, okay, a bit weird. A bit weird. Yeah. So it's been really painful because we haven't been able to see each other. We're very close. We talk every week. They're incredibly close to my children. And I've raised my children in Australia. My parents are in New Zealand. One sister is in New Zealand. Another sister is in Santa Barbara. And so our family's like very close, but we're all separate. And it's hard on my parents. And so especially the last 3 years, we haven't been able to go back. And this is the first time they're coming in 3 years to spend 3 weeks with us. And I thought, oh, great, it's going to be my opportunity to tell my father, how grateful I am to him. And I prepped him for it a little bit. I told him I'm going to write a gratitude letter, and because you need to, but I really took your advice seriously. I thought the key was to sit and read it to him. So my parents are really insanely hard workers, and after one day of kind of just seeing the sights and eating and not doing anything, they're like, what can we do? So they start ripping out vegetation at our house, which we're renovating. They're working 8 hours a day. They fill 2 enormous skips. And so we got busy, and I kept on thinking, I'm going to read it to Dad. And the moment just didn't prepare itself. And it wasn't right at the start because we were just reconnecting after not seeing each other 3 years. And then time went on, and I realised that the days were counting down. And we got to the very last day, and I was like, oh, I've got to do it, don't I, today? And I was quite scared. And then the hours on the last day count. I got to the afternoon. I was like, oh, Dad, I need to read you the gratitude letter. And Dad's like, oh, okay. And Mum was like, well, I'm not going to be around for this. And I was like, oh, but I really actually want you to be here, Mum, because I can't write a gratitude letter to my father without acknowledging how amazing you've been. I'm going to write you one. That you're going to get one for Mother's Day, but this is for Dad. But they are so close, and their most deeply inspiring relationship, the way they treat each other, the way that my father is with my mother, they are the most modern couple in their 70s that you've ever met. Their love is so deep. They're so passionate about each other. They're so kind and good to each other. They are how I knew to expect a lot from relationships. And I'm really, really fortunate that I have that with my partner, Kylie, who we're getting married in next year, which is this year, in a couple of months, which is really exciting. Anyway, I sit down at the table. Mum's sort of there reluctantly, and I start reading it. And Dad and I'm a big crier. This is probably the least I've ever cried telling personal stories, just that one moment just before. But I've cried in front of my staff at staff speeches, and when I've talked to them almost every time, because you love them so much, right? And it's just natural to cry. And my dad cried heaps when I was a child. He would cry over anything, but beautifully, not sorrowfully, happy crying. And so we both start crying straight away. And I sent the letter to you, Hugh, and you were like, good luck reading that to your dad. Right? Before I read it, Hugh was like, dude, you're on hiding nothing there, mate. I mean, I know a thing or two about gratitude. That's what that was what I was reading from you. Yeah. And so I started reading, I was crying immediately. And I'm pointing out all the, the wonderful things that, that the effects that he's had on me, and how I knew how to be a good man because of him, and one of the things I really appreciated is some alcoholism in our family, and one of the things that I really, really appreciated from him was that he wasn't a father that went to the pub. It was so normal. Everyone else's dad went to the pub. I was like, oh, it's just the smallest thing. My dad didn't go to the pub. He prioritised his time with Mum and the kids. Every other father was spending all their time at the pub in our district, pretty much. Not everyone, but a lot of them. And we never went to the pub. And he never drank excessively. And I benefited from that directly because he's, my main male role model. So we do follow, whether we want to or not, we do follow, right? And so I'm just so grateful, especially with the culture that I've grown up in as a young person working in restaurants. The culture of drinking when I was starting, it was just, it's rife. Thankfully, we're getting better. Young people are much smarter. And, but so I was able to say that. I was able to, I witnessed this person sort of attack my dad, verbally, and I thought it was going to lead, he was a gang member, and I thought it was going to lead to a physical altercation. And my dad wouldn't fight him. My dad's could afford him physically, but my dad was he didn't let him diminish him. but he was just so like powerful in the stance that he had, which was like, I'm not going to resort to physical violence here, even though you're kind of attacking me. It seems like you want to fight me. I witnessed that as a child, and it was really heavy. But my dad like took the higher ground. I was like so grateful. What a great example of a father you are. I'm so grateful for you. And yeah, so I got through it. And I thought my dad would kind of dislike it. But from the start, my dad was smiling like he was loving it. Right?
How could he dislike it?
Well, just because, generational awkwardness.
Yeah, sure.
You don't, too much praise.
Yeah.
Come from the backcountry New Zealand, man. We're modest farming family.
Yeah.
You don't talk like this. You don't
keep it to yourself.
Yeah, farmers are like chefs. You don't talk about depression and anxiety traditionally. That's why there are so many suicides in the backcountry for farmers. And it's such great pressure. So it's But Dad was like, he's a man who's evolved as well. So he was like grateful, and then he just wrote back the most remarkable letter to me when he got back to New Zealand. And I'm not going to reveal the things he said because I haven't asked him if I can, but I tell you, it was the most moving thing he's ever written to me. And he revealed very deeply personal things. And, I was so blown away by it. And that's thanks to listening to you guys. And, thankfully I had the courage to do that. And I'm really looking forward to doing it to my mum. It is a bit like that, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Ben. Thank you so much.
I just have one more thing I want to sort of chat about. And I know it's not the cleanest segue, but it's just a conversation that you and I have had. And when we had it, I remember thinking, I haven't heard this conversation from a male before, really. And I wish more people could hear it. And now I have an opportunity to get more people to hear it. But this took place when we were in Tasmania, and we'd had this day of riding for I think it was 7 or 8 hours. And we rode to the Bay of Fire. Is that what it's called? Bay of Fires, yeah. And we just did build up to I'd literally just run over a tiger snake. That was exciting. One of the guys we thought we'd lost, and then we found him and he reappeared. And then we all got our kit off and ran down into the water and had this incredible swim down the Bay of Fires. And I just thought, this is one of the most amazing moments of my life. This is one of the most, and I was on such a high from it. And then later we started talking, and it didn't represent the same joy. If you had something else going on in your head that I just hadn't even really thought about it. I don't know why. It just hadn't popped into my head, but it was a conversation I'd never really had with another male, and I thought it was a really special one. And I don't know how it was around body image, I guess.
Yeah. So I am really happy to talk about that. And it's something that I actually have to say that I haven't seen anybody about. But maybe I should if it continues to be a problem. Because I definitely should preface what I'm saying by saying that one of my number one beliefs in life is personal responsibility. And that's just, I'm just speaking about myself there right now. I'm not talking about what other people should do. But I know that it's on me to change fundamentally. When I know that I have an issue, I realize that I have the power to change that. It's pretty much only me. On that subject you're talking about, the Bay of Fires. So it was such a wonderful trip, and I feel bad for sort of infecting that part of it because
it enriched it for me. It was okay. It was such a beautiful moment, and then in reflection, it was a reminder of not everyone's having the exact same experience you are, and to look out for that.
No, well, perhaps, on the inverse to that, it was your first time ever mountain biking. I'm a really experienced mountain biker.
Was that obvious?
I arrived about an hour after the rest of them to Bay of Fire, so yeah.
Not too obvious. I'm going to be kind here, Ryan. But, I tell you what, I did appreciate Hugh's resolve, especially on this day, because this was a 7-hour ride, and even for me and for Haim, who's really fit, it was hard. Yeah, it was really hard. So if you haven't done it before, and even if you're a fit runner, cycling's not the same exercise, right? Yeah. It's
I thought I was going to be fine. I was like, they're going to be so surprised.
Yeah, but Al and Hugh did amazing. But we got to this bay, and I sort of knew this was coming in the trip, and I guess maybe I wasn't even looking forward to this already. As well, this part. I knew that we were going to go for this epic 7-hour ride, and at the end of it, we'd be able to go for a swim. And I was kind of, I don't know why, but I'd already maybe like figured that wasn't going to be like my greatest moment in the trip. And the trip is really like such a trip, just such a dream to go on this trip. It was just so amazing. And then we get to the beach after riding 7 hours, and we're going to have lunch on the rocks. And
it's Blue Derby Pods is the trip we went on. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. It's just remarkable. And everybody strips down to board shorts or boxers or whatever. And I immediately feel very self-conscious. Actually, really dark, I feel. I feel gross. And I follow everybody and I jump in the water. It's cold. And I look at, like Hugh and Heyman having like a really amazing time, and that's just so naturally easy, like with the top off. And it's not an experience I've ever had. Having my top off has never, ever been something that I ever enjoyed. It's never been easy. I'm not comfortable within my own body. And so I went and got in the water and I got straight out and I went sort of climb up the rocks back to the car, went basically straight back to the car, and as quickly as I could, like couldn't be quick enough, I got changed back into my clothes. And I came back down and had lunch, and it was lovely. And I was in a bit of a funny state with myself, so I just kind of walked off and went for a little walk, and just was so beautiful, the environment. And then, it's fine. The next morning, it was amazing because we were sharing so much, this group of 4 people, and sort of I don't know, like if you and Haim sort of designed it this way, but it was like it was just very revealing the whole time, and we'd sit around either at night or in the morning and just kind of talk, and it was just so beautiful. And this one morning, you and Al and Haim were going, "Oh man, how good was yesterday?" It was amazing. Like, what was the highlight of the day? And the guys were like, it was going for a swim in the ocean, and just like I just had this amazing moment, and talking about it, and I was just feeling really bad, and I just actually literally was like feeling exactly the opposite. And so I just said, I got to be honest, I felt so awkward saying it because I felt like such a party pooper. And I said, I just felt so horrible. I just felt so ashamed of myself, of my body. And they were like, what the fuck? Like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, yeah, I don't think I see myself the same way that other people see me. I see a different person sometimes. And I said, I think I suffer from body dysmorphia. And Hugh was like, no, like, man, I've had the same feeling, right? Like I look at myself in the mirror, and I don't want to tell your story, but you were like, I was like, really? And then everybody was sort of like on some level, maybe not Al.
He's
a god.
Yeah, a superhero body. Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
And so I was like, whoa, what? Like, how can you feel like that? I was like, because you're an athlete, and I was like, I mean, that's putting my own shit on you right now, but I was like, wow, that's crazy, right? Like, I would never know that. And so it was really like, it actually felt so good to talk about it. And the only person I'd ever talked to about it was with Kylie, who, Kylie and I have this incredibly close relationship where nothing is off limits to talk about. And we just talk about like how we're feeling all the time. So it's like, we never have problems because we're always communicating. It's the most excellent level of communication that I've ever had with another human. And I feel so blessed and grateful for her, and it's life-changing. So, but she'd been observing my behavior, and my behavior was that sometimes I can be high and low depending on how I feel about how I'm looking. And that stems from being overweight as a child. So there's a few moments in my life where like maybe somebody said to me, like, suck your tummy in, like, when I was young, or put your shoulders back even. Your posture's no good. And I know my posture's not good, right? And I know sometimes that I have like a stomach. And then, a few moments in childhood, I remember, I've written about this actually recently, standing in a river as a 8 or 9 year old, and a mean father, is the only way to describe him, said, "Look at you, fatty." And and I was like, I mean, as a parent, as a human, as a man, I can't imagine saying that to anybody ever, right? Like,
if you wrote a character saying that, you'd be like, that sounds ridiculous.
Yeah.
Who would say that?
a parent, like a 40-year-old man saying it to I know, the person still. I'm not friends with them anymore, but you can go to hell. But so there's a few things that happen, and I come out of high school, I put weight on in chef school in 2 years of full-time chef school, and I eat a lot of bad food, and I just drink for the first time, but I lost all this weight, like 30 kilos. And when I was overweight or bigger, I was pretending like I wasn't. So I was wearing really baggy shorts, big T-shirts, but I just remember this one day I was walking down the street and I caught a glimpse of myself in my baggy shorts and my T-shirt in the mirror, in the reflection of a shop window, and I said to myself, "You're fat," and I realised that I was overweight. It was a horrible feeling, right? Like, it was just like such a feeling of self-loathing. I actually do suffer from a bit of self-loathing at times. I can be incredibly difficult, and some of the things that I'll say to myself I wouldn't repeat on the podcast. Not often, but sometimes. When I actually, I just actually had a really, I just realised that, I've done what you did when you were making crumpets,
Oh, really?
Yeah, I actually did it recently, but I wasn't making crumpets. I wouldn't do it with food. Did it when I was trying to do an epoxy floor.
Yeah.
I failed at it chronically. It was totally irrational, like my behaviour towards myself.
Yeah, it's that's exactly the kind of thing, because cooking is not my area of expertise. Just like laying an epoxy floor isn't your expertise, but then
it is now.
There's I bet you it is. But there's I can't help but apply that pressure in other areas.
Yeah.
That
I really let myself down, and I can be scary to be around. Like, just in terms of the level of self-loathing, it's not. So I realised I was overweight, and I lost the weight, but my weight has fluctuated through my life, and I just have these moments where I can feel great, and then I can see myself, and I can see like the worst thing, and it's the thing that nobody would ever observe. Like, like I feel a bit fat or something, or I feel out of shape. And there's only been a few moments in my life where I've escaped that feeling, and it's been moments of really peak fitness, like really elite fitness, like racing bikes or mountain bikes, when I've been training and riding 600-700 Ks a week. And nobody, except a professional cyclist, can really sustain that level. So it's really irrational, and the expectation is of myself is really unfair. But I definitely view myself differently than other people see me. So Kylie, one day, I was having a bad bout of it, actually pretty recently, probably only 6 months before we actually had that conversation, Hugh. And we were going out, and this can sometimes happen too. We'll be going out and we're getting ready, and I really love fashion and love clothing, and so I was getting dressed, but I don't know, like I bought the wrong size, something wasn't fitting properly, and I felt shit. I felt like shit, and I was feeling a bit of pressure to get ready, and I just kind of vented about, like, I think how disgusting I was, and Kylie said, "Oh, Ben, I really think that you suffer from some form of body dysmorphia." And I was like, "Oh, what's that?" And she's like, "Well, I see you completely differently than you see yourself." And I said, "Well, that's because you love me," right? So I'm even trying to argue against that, and she's like, "No, like that's how you are, and she'll always pump my tires up and tell me how gorgeous I am, and and I don't give her enough credit for that, and I don't actually listen to those comments enough either, because I'm quite often pushing them away. I think I'm actually going, I'm looking kind of for the negative thing about myself. Which
I agree with Kylie. I think you're gorgeous.
Yeah, thank you. You did say that when I arrived today, Ryan. I appreciate that. I think you're gorgeous too. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. You're so right. You never know what's going on in their head, because you would never, as Ryan and anyone, you'd never think that about you objectively from the outside. But everything you've said on body stuff is so familiar to me personally, because I've always like hated my, well, not always. I think since about 15, I've probably hated this, my body. And I'm sorry to make this about me.
Not at all.
But I was looking at myself in the mirror about a few months ago with my top off, and the only word I could think of was disgusting, and a level of disgust. And I remember when I was about 15, it was probably about this time, a guy who I still know, we were at the beach and he made a joke and everyone laughed about how I was getting fat. And I feel like that was and it was at the time when my sister had an eating disorder, or it was at the tail end of it. And I don't know if I've told this. I don't think I've told this story on the podcast. I'd be surprised if I hadn't forgotten. But I remember being at a party when I was like 19 or 20 at my best friend's house, still my one of my best friends, and I was in the front. I was a bit drunk, hadn't drunk much. I was only 18 or something, and was in his room crying. And his girlfriend at the time came in, and she went and got him. And I remember saying to them, I feel like if I wasn't so lazy, I'd have an eating disorder, which is, I'm sorry if that offends anyone who does have an eating disorder, because I know that's not how it works, but that's how I felt at the time. And I've always felt, because my brother and sister are incredibly fit and healthy and athletic people, that and have this drive, and I've never had it. So I've always felt this sense of like, you've got, because I was quite athletic as a kid, and I think I probably as a 15-year-old, as a sportsman, I probably did have the body that I wanted. So I guess it's from coming from a different story and journey to you. But ever since then, I've sort of, I hate clothes shopping. I hate the way clothes look on me. I wish I could look good in clothes. Every time I go to the beach, it's a slightly stressful experience. We had had kids and friends of mine at their house the other day. Sorry, I can't speak properly. We're at my friend's for a bit of a pool party the other day with the kids, and he's just started wearing a rashie, and it was a comfortable joke for me to be able to make of becoming a dad and wearing a rashie. But the main reason I want to, and everyone's talking about how it's great because you don't have to put on sunscreen, but the real reason is it covers everything up. And I can feel a bit more comfortable rather than feeling ashamed and like I need to quickly jump into the pool to get the water up to neck level to hide what's below, or at least for the water to do its job to dysmorph the body below. So I don't know why exactly I brought that up, more just to say that you're not alone, and I would never look at you and think that you've got a body that is anything but beautiful. But I understand how you can have a completely different dialogue going on inside you. Like, kind of perversely, this is because my background's in film. I know that we've got a wide angle lens on that camera, and I know that I'm sitting in the worst possible position. And we've set this up, and every time we have to cut to a wide shot in an edit, I fucking hate it.
Wow.
Because I look terrible.
Oh, that's intense.
And it's the worst possible angle for me to be on, and placement within the frame. But I also don't want that to rule anything. I don't want it to overtake anything. So I'm kind of just like, all right, I've got to just sit with that and wear that one, because that's something I'm just going to have to accept.
You and I could swap seats.
You're not in a great position either. Ryan's in the best position. Just to say you're not alone. And I think a lot of men, if you and I feel like this, there must be many men out there that feel like this too.
Thank you, Josh. I appreciate that. I appreciate you sharing that. It's a lot to live with, right? And I
just want to be free and easy on a beach,
Yeah, no, I know. The thing is that Kylie's so comfortable within her own skin too.
So is my wife.
Yeah, and that's like I said to you yesterday, Hugh, that envy's not an emotion that I ever have or ever suffered from. Jealousy and envy, I've never really felt those things. But that would probably be maybe the one exception is Kylie. I love that. One of the things that I love about her so much is is that, right? Like that, it's really attractive to be comfortable in your own skin, and it's probably really unattractive for me to be beating myself up. Not every day, but quite often.
Yeah. Because you can get away with it. But once every now and then, when you're at the end of a bike ride and everyone else is jumping in the water, it rears its ugly head, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think, it's just good to know I'm not alone either.
I think for me, just to finish up on that a little bit, is that I think that I got a massive, I really get a lift from hearing you talk about it, and I really appreciate that, because it is one of the kind of like one of those harder things in life, but also really important, is to remember that you're not the only person that's going through something or has been through something. And when, with depression and anxiety, I think that, especially with depression, I felt like I was the only person that was experiencing that. I couldn't see anybody else in the world, right? And so from the start of the conversation, really with Kylie saying to me, hey, I think that you have a problem with this, and to then sort of revealing it to the group in Tasmania, and then to hearing you talk about it, just sort of brings it to life for me. And I've actually felt better since we had the conversation in Tasmania. Like, I haven't felt perfect, but I've also sort of perhaps been able to access something that I didn't have before, and that was like, oh, well, I know that like Hugh felt that once, and there were some other people that were sharing stories too. I'm going to think, well, Josh has been through that, so it's just helpful to remember that you're certainly not the only person that's.
Well, I think even though it was not intentionally, you unconsciously chose a pretty good crowd with Hugh and Haim listening. Pretty like, I don't know Al, but yeah, it's a pretty good couple of people to be talking
Well,
about.
the indication for what Al's like was after that conversation, about 10 minutes later, I was walking up to the cabin to get changed, and I just saw Al and Ben standing outside their cabin just hugging.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can vouch for Al just for equally with, just being such a beautiful person to reveal that too, even though we were strangers before the trip and are friends now. So
I wonder if there's something in when it's held inside and you don't have that shared thing, it sits in such a dark hole of shame that you can't really analyse it or think about it clearly, and it's laced with so much weight.
100%. I think you nail something there. For me, I definitely felt like I've been able to let it go a little bit. It's not gone, and maybe I do need to speak to somebody about it, like to actually release it. And I'm probably just going to sit with it across the next year and see if I can resolve it myself, because it's not totally debilitating me right now.
Yeah,
but it has at times, and it does in moments.
It's a perfect example of what it does. It steals what it should have been an incredible moment of joy. It just stole it from you. But again, it was a great reminder for me just to, not everyone's having the same time you are, and just to look out for that. Like, I wish so much I had seen that and put my arm around you or something.
But you could have never have known.
Okay, you would have hidden it.
You would never.
So I remember it was in the water.
I would. Do you remember me? Did I act strange there?
No, Al tackled me into the water, and it was really quite forceful. And
I
was dealing with that. So,
and I got out immediately after that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I was gone like a ghost. Right.
Yeah. But the thing that happened to me with all this was sharing it. I shared it on the podcast a couple of years ago, that the thing I look at when I get out of the shower is just my stomach, and I became way too obsessed with it, thinking it just wasn't good enough for how hard I was working. So sharing it was a big thing. And then one day I was at a shop trying on clothes, and when you go into different, like some of the mirrors on the side and on angles, and I saw someone who I didn't instantly think was me, because it was like at a weird angle. I didn't think I was looking at myself, and I realised what I was looking at was so different. It was I didn't think it was me. I was like, that's a very fit person. That's what I thought. Was my first thought. That's a very fit person.
So you got like an objective view of
for
yourself.
a millisecond. For a millisecond, I thought it was someone else. And my observation of that person was very generous and very kind. I thought, what a fit person. But I don't think that when I look at myself straight away. But when I thought it was someone, and I had it also when I was walking at the Anglesey Football Club, running there, really hot day over summer, really hot, and had my top off, and I saw a reflection of someone. I thought, that's a fit person. Again, I went, oh, that's me. And it was like 2 seconds of like, why don't you, when you know it's you, why aren't you that kind?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was interesting.
Exact same thing happens to me.
Right.
Exact same thing.
Okay.
It's not just moments of negativity. It's also moments of like, oh, I look thin or something, right? Like, it sounds very self-involved, and it is, but it's completely self-involved. But yeah, it sounds vain, but it's really.
I don't think so.
Not.
No.
I have that with photos. I have like when I immediately see a photo, I'm always like, oh God, you look shit. But then 6 months later, I look back and go, actually, I didn't look that bad.
That's a bigger thing, actually. I sometimes try not to smile in photos because my face gets rounder, which is like messed up, right?
Wow.
I know, that's a horrible thing to reveal.
I have honestly thought you have one of the great smiles.
Yeah,
I thought it's the kindest smile. I've thought that for so long.
Oh,
Definitely
that's
is.
so lovely. Well, Kylie says, like, you look your best when you smile all the time, but yet, like, for me, I'm like more chiseled or something. Well, I can't even do a serious face now. Which is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. I know a lot of it it feels ridiculous to talk about it, but it's so internal. And it's funny because not funny, but like I think I kind of revealed it not to my parents, to my father-in-law, and they were like, he's a great guy. He couldn't get his head around it, right? He was like, and he was like, yeah, but just like, what are you talking about? Like, like,
just don't worry about it.
No, like you're sweet. Like, what are you talking about, right? I'm like, no, you don't get it. And he's like, no, but just feel better. And I'm like, what you don't understand is that's not how I feel. like and I had to really when I really said it forcefully, I was like, just so you know, like, it doesn't matter what you think or say. It's not rational. It's what I feel. It's how I'm feeling, right? He's like, oh, I get it. Yeah, I get it totally. Okay, yep.
Yeah.
Ben Shewry, it's been over 2 hours of chatting. It's been, I don't know if we'll turn this into a 3-part series or it's really beautiful stuff. I feel so privileged to listen to you speak again. I always do. As I said at the start, you make me want to be a better dad, a better friend, and also a better business owner. And
you made me want to be a better artist.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's kind of the effect you have. Because I think you think so deeply about.
This is a very small anecdote, but Hugh, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, Hugh, but you sent a voice message to Hugh, and in the voice message you mentioned we were talking about bolognese, and that you'd love to talk to me about bolognese one day. And Hugh played me the voice message because he knew how chuffed I'd be to hear that. And at the start of the voice message, you talked about how you could hear kids playing in the background of Hugh's voice message, and you mentioned the beautiful sound of kids running through a house, and that you hadn't had that in a while because your kids had grown up. And I think about that honestly every day. That little anecdote, so you've made me, and you'd have no idea, but you've made me appreciate my having kids, just having children in the house, and the age my kids are at more as well, through that simple little ability to have that observation of what's going on around you. So thank you.
Thank you. The music of parenting or parenthood or something. But it's true. It's gone. That sound is different now. It's It's a teenage sound,
and it's not going to last for long. So it's maybe
no. And I wish that I'd maybe been more observant when I had the chance. But
so thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Ben Shewry, thank you so much.
Thank you. What a privilege. Thanks
to the lasagna. Best lasagna we've had.
Absolutely.
Thank you, mate.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Ben Shewry. Wasn't that amazing?
He is amazing, yep.
Incredible.
There's just so many, like across both those, like both parts, the part one, part two, part one last week, this part, there's just so many things that he spoke about. It was just so open and so
kind
raw.
of truthful. Like, I feel like he had a commitment to be truthful with everything he was saying to the way he experiences life. Like, I felt like it was, I get the impression that that's like above being just like a chef. It's like, it felt like talking to an artist who happens to work in food as the way of expressing their art, because there was such a commitment to creative and intellectual, like, authenticity in everything he said.
But then the effort he puts in to his cooking, I feel like he applies to everything else that he does. Like his parenting, his with his partner Kylie. I just feel like that level of detail he applies to everything else he does.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds
which
like
I find so inspirational.
Yeah.
The thing I thought about most from that episode, and it's relevant to us right now because we're doing our live tour at the moment, he brought up the gratitude letter that he wrote his dad.
Yeah.
off the back of an episode he heard us do. And one of the most common things I've been hearing, because we hang around and chat to people after the show, from people who come to the show, is that writing a gratitude letter to someone they love has been life-changing for them. And this is purely just a reminder to people, if you were teetering on the edge of doing it, you weren't sure if you wanted to, you felt like it might be a good idea, I cannot encourage you to do it more. And I hope Ben's experience did likewise encourage you to pursue that, because I know Penny, my wife, wrote it and sat on it for a while and was a bit nervous about reading to her dad. She did, and it was just beautiful. So I strongly recommend you give it a go.
Incredible.
The other thing which I think would be really interesting to talk about is so Ben sharing what he shared about his issues with body image was just extremely moving, and obviously, like he said, he hadn't talked about it publicly before. And I know Hugh knew about it from talking to him on the trip. But the thing that moved me just as much, if not more, was Josh, you then sharing what you shared about your own experiences with it.
Yeah, I never really planned to talk about it, but
no, of course not. That's what made it so amazing, I think.
Well, I just felt in his presence and him talking like that, I couldn't not be honest about it. I would have felt like if I didn't say anything, I felt inspired by his sort of honesty and vulnerability about the whole thing to think, well, I think I need to talk about this as well. I don't know, just all kind of came out.
Yeah, it felt right.
Yeah, it felt right.
It must be just really...
I don't think, by the way, I don't think I've got... I don't really know what body dysmorphia is. I don't think I've got that. I think I just have had a lot of shame about my physique for a long time.
Well, it probably doesn't necessarily need a label.
Yeah.
It's more just your experience. Must be very... God, I mean, I did enjoy that line, listening back to it, that I just want to be free and easy at the beach.
Yeah, who doesn't want that?
I know.
Yeah.
But I know that, I don't think about it like, I don't have the same feelings as you do, but I definitely have thought, God, it'd be nice to be free and easy at the beach.
Wouldn't it? Oh, just to be rolling around in your boardies and no top on. And
yeah, it seems so effortless to people.
Not your body not be a consideration at all. Like not to think any shame or... Yeah, just for it to be completely normal. Yeah, it's an interesting... I think since we've recorded that, because I don't know if this is giving away a bit, but it's been a while since we've recorded that, and we're now packaging it together and recording these things. I have actually lost quite a bit of weight. And it's... Yeah, and I feel like kind of shameful for saying this, because I feel like I am less ashamed of what I look like. And I reckon when we recorded that, I didn't like the way clothes look on me, and because I've lost a little bit of weight, I kind of do not mind anymore. I'm certainly not at free and easy on the beach level, and I'm not sure I ever will be.
Not many people are.
No,
I'm not sure too many people are.
Yeah, but I feel like I actually quite like the way I look, which is something I haven't felt for a very, very long time. But the reason why I said I feel shame over that is that I feel like, of course, there's real health implications for me losing weight, and that's the main reason I've done it, due to doctors and health and stuff, which is maybe one of the reasons I've been able to continue it, because it was to do with like cholesterol and stuff like that. But I feel like I also, being thinner shouldn't be the thing that makes me feel better, if that makes sense. Like that feels like a dangerous path to be going down. But I can't deny that I do feel a bit better about the way I look after losing some weight. So it's but it is really good for me and healthy. So it's a confusing area.
Well, I mean, from that point of view, I mean, like you said, like the reason you did it was for health. It wasn't necessarily for vanity reasons. Yeah,
because I've never been able to lose weight for vanity reasons. It's never been able to stick, even though it's a funny thing of like, I've felt the shame about the way I look, but using that as the driver to lose weight, to look better, has never been something that has been able to stick enough. And I think it's because it comes from a place of shame. So it's always a negative talk going on, which continues, I think, for me anyway. I'm sorry, a psychologist would be able to say otherwise. But maybe because there's an optimistic lens over this of like, if I lose weight and lower my cholesterol, hopefully I do. I don't know if I have yet, but hopefully I do. That means I get more life. So that's a pretty positive way of looking at it. And it has the byproduct of clothes fitting a little bit better now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's confusing though, because I feel like that, Have I explained that well?
Yeah, I know what you
Totally.
mean. I mean, like, this is not the same thing, but it kind of reminds me of, the advice that people give you to don't believe the good reviews, because then you believe the bad reviews. If it's like if you're a restaurant or if you've done a film or something, it's like if you read reviews or comments like on our Instagram or whatever, if you are reading the good ones and going like, oh, we got some good feedback, I'm gonna really believe that, and I'm gonna really like bank that, take that to the bank and go, oh, we're good because these people say we're good. If you do that, then you're going to believe the bad ones as well, and the bad ones hurt way more. Or they're not hurt, but they impact you way more and they stay with you for longer. So that's what it reminds me of, where it's like, I don't know if it is the same.
I think to delve into that analogy, I think what you're saying, maybe, or you can correct me if I'm
I
wrong.
haven't really done a good job of analogizing, but yeah.
But is that like saying that then if I put on the weight again, I'll feel terrible again?
That's what I mean.
Yeah. And I think that is my concern. And I think I probably would. But maybe that's because it would be also linked. Now there's the extra weight, so pardon the pun, of the health concerns as well. Yeah. So anyway, but I guess the interesting thing, well, not interesting, but I felt like that really, me and Ben talking honestly like that, like we'd never met. And then after that, we've shared a few like long voicemails about stuff, nothing too deep, just like things that we'd like, music, because we loved music and so do I, like sharing music with each other, and it started a sort of a nice little friendship.
So nice,
and I think if we hadn't have had that moment in the podcast, or just if we hadn't had that moment, I don't think that little friendship would have developed.
It's the power of V.
vulnerability. Not the drink.
No. The power of vulnerability. So connecting.
Yeah, it really is. And it's, and who knows, maybe having that connection with someone like him who is so admirable is one of the many reasons that I've sort of feel less shameful about the whole thing and have been able to lose a bit of weight as well, potentially.
It's it's so great, isn't it? Because otherwise, if you're not like being vulnerable with someone, which is very rare that you are able to, and it's such a specific situation where we're doing like a podcast. But without that, you probably just sort of assume that, I will have nothing in common with that person because they're a famous, successful chef. They're not going to want to talk to me, they have those thoughts that they're ridiculous, but you do have them. But then you find like that common ground, and it's like, oh, well, that stuff doesn't matter. Let's just talk about music. We're just both people who want to be free and easy on the beach. Like that's the connective tissue.
That should be our Spotify playlist, joint playlist.
Free and easy on the beach. Get that going.
I think for anyone listening to this who wants to learn more or needs resources or support, the Butterfly Foundation is a wonderful, wonderful place to go. And if your family member is struggling with eating disorder, I talk about them a lot, but EDFA, Eating Disorders Families Australia, are a group that I wish were around when we were going through it. We went through with our sister. They're incredible support for parents or for family members of people with eating disorders. Probably worth mentioning both those incredible organisations off the back of that conversation. But yeah, he was great. He's incredible.
Yeah, incredible.
Well, see you guys in a sec when we stop recording. But other than that, we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
To our listeners, we can't wait to talk to you again in a week's time.
Can't wait.
Bye now.
Hugh, it's Ryan Shelton from the podcast. So this is a bit strange. I got inspired by Ben Shewry, okay? So we were just talking to him and I got really excited. And you know I'm not a cook, but I wanted to make something. I wanted to cook something creative like Ben does. And this is so weird. I think I missed a step in the recipe. Something went wrong. And I think I'm inside the cake. I don't know how this happened, but I'm pretty sure I'm surrounded by sponge, so I can't think of any other reason. Can you come round just to check on me? Yeah, look for the big cake, because I think I'm in that. Thanks, it's Ryan Shelton from the podcast.
To call back, press 22. To replay message, press 1 to reply.
The Imperfects is not a licensed mental health service and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, treatment or assessment. The advice given in this episode is general in nature, but if you're struggling, please see a healthcare professional or call Lifeline on 131114. The Imperfects is hosted and produced by Hugh Van Cuylenberg, Ryan Shelton and Josh Van Cuylenberg. Our executive producer is Bridget Northeast. This episode is filmed by Andy Poole and edited by George Martin.
You set the tone and I'll be alright. You set the flame by the doorway, let it be my light. You set